A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video.
Hello! Welcome or welcome back. If you don't know who I am, my name is Paloma, my artist name is palomathepeach, and I am what I like to call, I guess, an internet artist, an internet illustrator, and thankfully, I am able to make a living off of being an artist, and I am making a little bit of an updated video on how exactly I do that. So I do have my notes here in case you see me looking down. I wrote down a lot of stuff because I didn't want to miss it, but basically I am going to be talking about how I am able to make a living off of being an artist. This is solely my journey. My journey is not the only way to achieve this. There are so many other paths that you can go down, and I am going to put a bunch of other people and videos that I think are just helpful to look at for other journeys and other pieces of advice. Don't just watch this video, get as much inspiration and advice as you can, but I'm just going to be sharing with you my advice in case I have anything that helps you out. So currently I am 22 years old and I have been doing artistry full-time for about 2 years now, and I'm still a part-time student getting my bachelor's degree. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my beginning because I feel like that's always important, just to preface my journey and how things have kind of unfolded for me. So I started when I was 19 years old in community college, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, and I was living with my parents as well. I was young, living at home. I didn't really have much responsibilities other than school, so I had a ton of free time, and I also spent a lot of time on the internet. So I started watching people like Catnip Illustrations, Frannerd, Apple Cheeks, Lee Ellickson, and I kind of started seeing what they were doing and how they were working as artists by like making stuff for a store. Obviously all of them like do it in a slightly different way. Yeah, so I started watching them and I felt really inspired. I personally had already had a YouTube channel with about 100,000 subscribers, and at the time when I was 19, I was doing like journaling content. If you're familiar with journaling YouTube, I did a lot of like sketching and planning, and I did a lot of like stationery stuff, so kind of in the same realm, but I was getting kind of a little bit tired of that and I wasn't feeling as passionate about it anymore, so I decided to try out digital art and making my own stickers because I really felt like doing that. I bought myself an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and then my family was kind enough to get me like a Cricut cutting machine and some sticker paper to try it out, and it took me about a year to finally release my store because I just felt like my digital art skills weren't there yet, and I felt like I just wasn't ready. I opened up and I made about 30 to 40 sales in my first year, which is fine. I didn't have the intention of like making it blow up as big as it did, but I just kind of wanted to do it to have fun. And eventually during the pandemic of 2020, my YouTube videos of like art vlogs went viral, and they didn't like, you know, get huge, but they got a lot of attention, and that is how basically all of this started for me and how I'm able to do it now. So like I said, there's a lot of different ways, but that's kind of like my origin story. And I'm going to get started talking about running my store, and then I'll talk a little bit about my other sources of income, which is YouTube and Patreon. There's just not as much details in that, but I'm going to tell you guys about my store, things I've learned, what's changed, etc. So first and foremost is you want to establish a goal. Even though I did not have the vision in mind of necessarily like having this huge business and living off of it, I unintentionally did set a goal, and it was just, I want to have fun and I want to try out making stickers that I think are really cute. So that was my goal when I started, and I think it's important to set yours as well. If you have long-term goals, like I want to live off of this, I want to run a large company, really big goals that take several years, I recommend setting several short-term goals, because if you just look at your long-term goal and it's very far away, it can get a little bit discouraging and it might be difficult to see progress. So I think setting many multiple short-term goals every year can be really helpful, and make it, somewhat easy for yourself. Obviously, make it so that you push yourself, but you don't want to open up your store and be like, I want to make 1,000 sales within my first 6 months, because while that can happen, it is not extremely realistic. So just have your long-term goals and work towards them, but also make short-term goals for yourself as well. Now, actually getting started, I would recommend starting small and within your means. So when I started, I only made handmade stuff. I did not start manufacturing until about 6 months in, after making really good sales. I was making my own stickers and printing out my own prints, and also making my own sticker sheets. So I was not manufacturing anything. I was not really investing that much money into my business. The only thing that I was buying was printer ink, printer paper, sticker paper, and that was about it. And obviously buying shipping supplies and stuff like that, and I'll get into that later. But I recommend starting small and within your means. When I first started, I was making about 5 to 20 items of each product. So each sticker, each print, etc. I was making about 5 to 10, and that was pretty good for me. I didn't have to worry about filling up a bunch of stock, or I didn't have to worry about getting rid of it because it was taking up a lot of space. So I think that's great to start off with. I think that's something that people tend to be confused about, because I was too. I wasn't sure, but I think 5 to 20 for your first release is a good number. Obviously, you can start off manufacturing, but just think about really hard how much you want to invest in. Like I said, I was 19 years old, so I didn't really have the money to be manufacturing a lot of stuff, so I went the handmade route. But of course, you can go the manufacturing route, and I will get into manufacturing later on. Getting started artistically, so if you are not already an artist or have not already been practicing art for a while, I'm going to go over some tips on how you can get started. So I personally use an iPad. Like I said, I have almost always used an iPad. I did have experience with the Wacom tablet way back, but I personally did not love it. I was not able to achieve the looks that I wanted with it, just because my skill level was pretty low at the time. But I started with an iPad, but you can always start with a tablet that you hook up to a computer. Those tend to be a lot cheaper. I think the one that I had in the past was around in the $30 range. And of course, with your tablet, you're gonna have to use a program. So on my iPad, I personally use Procreate. It's $10 one time from the Apple Store, and the possibilities are endless. Procreate is an amazing program. Other than that, for your computer, you can use, I've heard of a lot of different ones. I personally used Photoshop because it's what I had. Whenever I was in community college, we had access to the student Adobe suite or whatever. So I personally used Photoshop, but you can also use Clip Studio Paint, I've heard of. You can use Adobe Illustrator. There's tons that you can look into. Again, I'm not an expert on that because I've pretty much always exclusively used my iPad, but there's a lot of different programs that you can download on your computer. As far as developing skills, your best bet is going to be practice. I would say that it took me about 2 to 3 years for me to start becoming happy with the art that I was making. I lasted a very long time not feeling happy because my skills just weren't there. I had been practicing traditional art for quite a long time at that point, but transitioning to digital art was really hard for me. I still find digital art to be kind of difficult. You eventually do start getting used to digital art. The best way is just continuing to practice and getting used to how the pen behaves, and learning all the different brushes in your program, learning about color palettes, which is also much more difficult, I feel, than when you work traditionally, because your possibilities are just endless when it comes to color digitally. But of course, practice is going to be my #1 tip. I know it's slow, and I know it seems like it doesn't improve when you're working, but when you're doing it consistently, even 1 month of a difference, you can look back and see improvement, which is wonderful. There are a lot of free tutorials and resources here on YouTube. I have some on my channel. There's a ton of amazing artists that have free tutorials and resources on here. You can literally just look it up depending on whatever. You can look up how to illustrate on Photoshop, how to illustrate on Procreate. You can get pretty specific, and I'm sure you can find tutorials on it. But tons of free resources. There are some paid ones. There's some paid like class websites. I'm sure you've heard of a lot of them. Skillshare is one of them. I've personally used it. Domestika is one of them. I have also personally used that one. And Class 101 I have also used. And so those Skillshare is like subscribing, and then Domestika tends to be pretty affordable, and then Class 101 is a little bit on the pricier side, but all three offer tons of different options, and those are just some paid ways if you want a little bit more structure when learning a specific program or skill. Okay, let's get into time management, which is something that I think we all absolutely struggle with. It took me a long time to get a hold of it, and even now I still have days where I struggle. Number one, use a planner. I'm sure a lot of you already do, but if you don't, please use a planner. It's life-changing, it's life-improving, whether it's digital or physical. Use a planner. I at one point used digital planners, but it was really difficult for me to keep up with for some reason, so I just use a physical planner and I write down the stuff I gotta do and I cross it off when I do it. It's so much easier when you dump everything that you have to do onto a piece of paper or onto your computer, because if you keep it all in here, it can get really difficult, it can get really overwhelming, you're gonna forget stuff. So it's just better to write it down, get it out of your brain, so then you can arrange it and see when you can get your stuff done. This obviously is like general advice, but I'm assuming that people who are watching this are my age or even older, so you know, we don't have as much time anymore for, like I did when I was 19 years old, to just like dedicate all your time to your art business. So fit it in wherever you see, but using a planner has changed my life. Going along with that, use your free time intentionally. I tend to do this a lot as well. Whenever I'm very exhausted or I want to escape, I tend to scroll on my phone for hours. And then I finish and I look back and I'm like, oh, I felt like I could have used that free time a little bit more intentionally. So for you, if you have a day job, you have school, you have kids, you know, whatever, whenever you do have free time, think about how you want to use it. You're gonna have to dedicate some of your free time to work towards this like art goal. Obviously you don't want to overwork yourself or burn out, but even if you're not able to create or work free time just because you don't have the mental energy to, still use your free time intentionally. Use it to enrich yourself and use it in a way that it is going to enrich your art, whether that's watching an inspiring movie, watching inspiring TV shows, reading a book that inspires you, you know, something like that, rather than sitting and scrolling on your phone. And I'm not shaming it. Like I said, I do that a lot and it's a habit that we tend to fall into a lot. But if you have these goals for yourself, try to use your free time a little bit more intentionally and catch yourself and wonder if you could be doing something that is a little bit more, not necessarily productive because you don't have to work, but you know, a little bit more intentional, a little bit more mindful. Okay, so for the marketing aspect of your business, I personally only use the internet. There are other ways that you can do it, but I think the internet is typically the most used way now because it's free. All you have to do is post on the internet, on your social media platforms, and you can basically use that as marketing. Obviously, it's gonna be harder to like get it out there, but that is what I use and what I solely rely on. Some tips for that, again, I'm gonna have videos linked on like how exactly to get down to the logistics of becoming viral or growing your following and stuff like that. I'm not specialized in that, but I'll have some videos down there for you guys if you're really looking into that. But my advice is watch social media trends. Right now, TikTok is huge. So if you don't have a TikTok for your art or your business, I recommend starting one and posting on there. Video, going along with that, video format, especially short video format, is highly prioritized on the internet right now. TikToks, Reels, YouTube Shorts, stuff like that, that is getting really pushed out hard by the algorithm. So I recommend getting into that. You also want to balance, whenever you're posting stuff about your business or your art, you want to balance trendy stuff versus more genuine stuff to you, if that makes sense, because I think whenever it comes to pleasing the algorithm and you're in your beginning days and you're just trying to get up there, I do think you have to lend yourself a little bit to trendiness. I used to say that as long as you're yourself, like, people will see that and they will automatically be attracted to your art. And I still think that's true, but I do think you have to do a little bit of trendiness because that does get attention. So look at your art community, kind of like the art that you are into, and see if you can find subject matter that you find that people really like. For example, strawberries are a huge trend. I personally love strawberries and strawberry imagery, but that's like something that tends to be really popular for people online. So sometimes I like to use that in my art, but I would definitely balance those two out because I think it can get a little bit exhausting when you're making art only because people are gonna like it. So yeah. Lastly is consistency. Consistency is hard, especially when it comes to creativity, and some people will tell you it doesn't matter, don't be consistent. Again, it depends on your goal, your end goal. If you want to do it full time, you are gonna have to kind of be consistent at least a little bit, at least on one platform, whether that's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, just because you don't want people to forget about you. And that doesn't mean that you're not gonna post for a week and people are suddenly gonna think that you disappeared. But if you don't post for like a month, 2 months, your engagement is very likely to go down. People might not be remembering you as much, so you don't want to let too much time go by. Obviously, if you're not able to, don't push yourself to post every day because that's also not necessary. I personally try to do at least once a week, and I feel like that works for me. So kind of mess around with it, see how often you're feeling creative, see what works with your schedule, but being consistent, whether that's once a week, twice a week, every other day, once every 2 weeks, etc. Just try to be consistent so that people know that you're there, basically. That's kind of like getting started, how I handle things, but let's get into more of logistics, and that is going to be manufacturing, shipping, and pricing of your stuff. So manufacturers, I have a ton. Personally, I have my list with all the links on my Patreon, and I don't say that in a way to say like, go sign up for my Patreon, but because I have that on there and my patrons sign up and have that access to that master list, I have to respect that. So I don't share my manufacturers out to the public online anymore, but manufacturers are extremely easy to find. Reviews for them are very easy to find. I mean, when I first started, it was a little bit harder, but now you can Google it and it's super easy. I mean, everybody is making merch of something, so manufacturers are super easy to find. Some examples of like really popular ones are Vistaprint, Sticker App, Sticker Mule. There's just a ton. A quick Google search, I guarantee you, will find you some. You can also ask around to people in your community what their recommendations are. You don't necessarily have to say like, what do you use, but you can ask them for recommendations. And trust me, manufacturers are extremely easy to find, at least in the US, and that's all I can give advice on because I live in the US. But yeah, very easy to find on Google. If you can also take a look at Alibaba. I have gotten some manufacturers from there. I don't use any from Alibaba anymore, but it's super cost effective. Just make sure when you're looking on Alibaba and you're looking up, for example, enamel pin manufacturer, make sure it's a verified business by Alibaba.com, and make sure that they've been in the business for like 3+ years, because it'll normally say that. And just do your research. Trust me, you're gonna find some. Shipping. Everybody's least favorite thing, most scary thing, at least for me. I personally use ShipStation. There are a lot of services like that, like Shippo and then Pirate Ship. It's basically just like shipping services that connect to your website builder. If you are using a website builder like Squarespace like I do, it basically just connects to there and it makes the shipping super easy. It'll sync people's orders like with their name and their address and everything, and then you just pay the label. The label for packages, I personally ship through USPS, whether it's international or domestic. In the US, for a domestic label, I pay about They start at about $3 and they end at almost an upwards of $5. I live in Texas, so really the only labels that tend to reach, kind of get close to the $5 range are packages going to Alaska or Hawaii. Personally, that is what I pay for labels. They are pretty expensive. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, but that's just what it is. And then for international, so any country outside of the US, I have to pay for one label. They start at about $15 and they can go upwards of about $23, $24. So very expensive to ship internationally, at least packages. So that's so you can kind of get a feel of how much you should be charging for shipping. You want to charge how much the actual label is going to cost, and also your shipping supplies. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, that's what my shipping rates are looking like. I personally charge $6.50 for domestic and I believe $25 for international, just to be able to cover the label, the mailer or the box, the physical label, like the paper that I use to print it out, the labor for packing it, because I do pay my assistant to pack most of the orders that I get, and then all the little stuff that's included inside. So like the thank you card, the little glassine bags, a thank you sticker, stuff like that. So I want to consider all of that when pricing my shipping, and you want to as well. So shipping supplies, again, they're really accessible. I get them from a mixture of places. Amazon is probably the most accessible and the quickest, but it can tend to be a little bit more expensive. And then there's another place called packagingsupplies.com, which has a ton of stuff. Basically, you just want to look at what kinds of products you are selling. So for example, I have flat mailers, which stay rigid and flat for shipping prints and stuff like that. And then I have puffy mailers for other stuff like pins and keychains and stuff like that. So you want to have a variety depending on what kind of products you sell. If you only do paper goods, you can get away with flat mailers, and those will help protect that paper stuff from getting bent or anything. But yeah, you just kind of want to play around and look at what kind of products you're selling and what that demands, and also the sizes. You want to make sure that you get stuff that's big enough to fit your stuff. And then, like I mentioned, I put stuff inside of the orders, and of course that's all optional. You don't have to do that. I personally try to put all the products in like a glassine bag just to keep them all together. I like to seal them off with a thank you sticker that I designed. And then I personally also like to include a thank you note, and it just has like some stuff about me on the back, and then the other side kind of serves as like a free print. So that's stuff that I include. Sometimes I'll do wrapping paper as well. I have a wrapping option on my store, so wrapping paper can be an option for you as well. But you can really customize that to your liking. The prices for that stuff tend to be pretty inexpensive, tend to be in the cents range. Same with the mailers and stuff. The mailers can start anywhere from like 50 cents, but they can go upwards of like $2 per piece, just because depending on the size and the type and the material and all that stuff. But there's a ton of options. Just do your research and shop around to see what works best for you. There is another option for shipping, which I offer, and it is stamped envelopes. So in stamped envelopes, you can only send small flat items. So I personally call it sticker mail because it's really only for stickers that fit in the envelope. And a stamp right now in the US is about 60 cents. International stamp is about 130 to 140. I want to say that it went up. Yeah, so I charge very little for that shipping, and it's a way for people to get smaller items and not have to pay that larger shipping price. So the only bad thing about this is that it's not tracked, but you just want to disclaim that for your shipping whenever you do offer that. But it's super easy. All you do is you write the address, your return address, you stamp it, and you put the stuff inside the envelope and send it on its way. It is a little bit slower as well from packages, but again, you just want to kind of disclaim that sticker mail is a cheaper option, but it's also higher risk of your stuff getting lost, and it's also going to move a little bit slower. All right, lastly, when it comes to running a store is pricing of items. So this is going to vary widely for everyone. If it's handmade, obviously it's gonna be, I'm talking about handmade stickers, I'm not talking about like paintings or anything like that, but if it's handmade, obviously you're gonna be able to price it a little bit lower because all you're gonna want to make back is like the materials used and your labor. But when it comes to manufactured goods, they are gonna be, you're gonna have to price them a little bit higher because you're gonna want to make back the money that you spent, and you're also gonna put in, you know, your creative idea and your labor and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna depend on you. For example, if you sell a sticker at 50 cents, you're gonna want to make it at least $1.50, and then you're gonna want to, sorry, not sell. If you made a sticker at 50 cents, you're gonna want to sell it at like $1.50, and then you're gonna want to include how long did it take you to draw the sticker design, and then like you want to pay yourself your salary and money because you came up with that idea and you took the time to draw it out. So consider all those factors, consider your skill level, and also what's really helpful is to look at other people's stores. Just see the kind of like average price range that people are selling stuff at. So if you're selling a 5x7 art print, look at other people's 5x7 art prints and the similar, like, not style, but maybe effort put in. So like maybe don't look at a 5x7 print that's like super elaborate and has a ton of line work, but one that kind of looks like it was a similar amount of work done, and see what their pricing is like, and you can kind of base it off of that. There's a lot that we can learn from other people, and I find that that's been the best way to price items. Now I'm gonna get a little bit into Patreon because that is my other source of income. Patreon.com is a subscription website, and it is where people who like you or your stuff can go on that website and choose to give you money monthly in exchange for goodies or just as donation. I personally don't have a recommendation for when to start a Patreon. I think if you're gonna want to be super active on there, I think waiting until you have about maybe 10,000 followers somewhere would be a good range to kind of be like, hey guys, I have a Patreon. But there's so many ways that you can play around with Patreon. The way that I handle it is I mainly do mailed goods. So every month I allow people to sign up and they pay for their mailed goods, and I send them out at the end of the month. Kind of like the stuff I have going on. I also offer other stuff like digital downloads. I do an audio newsletter on there. Again, like I said, I have my master list, like resources and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things that you can offer. Again, I recommend looking at other people's Patreons. I'm subscribed to a lot of people's Patreons. It's just super helpful to see what other people are doing and just do what's possible for you. If you're like, hey guys, the only thing that I can do on my Patreon is upload a video a month, that's totally fine, because as long as you disclose exactly what's going to be going on your Patreon, people have the right to sign up if they want to. And if you want to set it up before you even have like a ton of followers, quote unquote, you can set it up and just have it as like a little donation jar and be like, hey guys, if you feel like supporting me in any way, you can sign up here and give me $1 a month, and that's going to help me out a ton. So lots of different ways to play around with Patreon, lots of different things that they offer. I recommend just making the account because you don't have to publish it to the public if you don't want to, but just make your Patreon account and play around with it. Look at other people's pages, say them, and see what kind of stuff you want to offer and what works for you and your schedule. Lastly, I have YouTube, and it is arguably maybe not the hardest, but maybe like the hardest to get into, because you're solely relying on like an internet algorithm to recommend your stuff to everybody. But basically, I think what the most important thing with YouTube is good quality footage and lighting. And with how advanced iPhones are today, you don't need to buy a camera to start off. Do not invest in that if you don't have the means, or if you don't want to, or if you're not ready to take the risk. Using the back camera of your phone, using the back camera of your phone in good lighting is going to give you great footage. Obviously, if YouTube starts giving you more income, then you're going to want to invest in a camera, but good lighting, high quality footage, and authentic content. Sometimes that can be a little bit difficult because I feel like when we set up a camera, we feel like we have to kind of like put on a character or put on a show. Just film whatever you want. You don't have to invest a ton. I personally use my iMac to edit, and I use Final Cut Pro 10, I think it's called, Final Cut Pro 10. There's a lot of options for editing software. For Apple, obviously there's the free iMovie. It's going to be a little bit more limited when you do free editing softwares, but there's a lot of ways that you can make it work. I used to make it work with iMovie, but that is, again, that's personally what I use. I use a Sony camera. It's going to be right here. The name is so long, I never remember it, but this is the camera that I use, and I don't use any mic because this camera comes with a little wind cat to cover the mic, and the audio tends to be pretty good. I don't know, you guys let me know, but just start your YouTube, guys. There's no time like now. Please don't be embarrassed. It's hard to talk to a camera when you're not used to it. It's awkward at first, but once you get over that first awkward phase and you get used to it and you get started, it's gonna start slowly snowballing and you're gonna be fine. Just do it, trust me. You're gonna have a blast. That is all the tips that I have right now. I'm gonna share some final thoughts of what I've learned, especially over the last 2 years. I did make a business video way back, and you guys can watch that, but I did make one way back, and that was more like about logistics and stuff. This is more like an overall view and kind of how things have changed over the last few years. But take small risks, little by little, but always keep taking risks, because the scary things in life, the stuff that we're scared to do, tend to be the most rewarding. So take small risks, just do it. Trust me, you're gonna be okay. Secondly, there are natural dips. All progress and success is not gonna be going up, 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 up. There's gonna be, you know, you're gonna be doing really well, and then, oh, it's going down a little bit, and then, oh, and then there's natural dips. I have had natural dips. It's totally okay. It's the internet. The internet is very ebb and flow. So it's easier when you accept that, because it can be pretty scary when you experience a first dip. Lastly, something that has basically been preached this whole video, have multiple sources of income, as many as you can. I talked to you guys about the 3 sources that I have. There's also client work, there's also commissions. There's a lot of different stuff that you can try out, but just have multiple sources of income, because when you put all your eggs in one basket and you put a lot of pressure into one thing, sometimes it can be overwhelming, sometimes it can be a little bit scarier. But my recommendation is diversify those streams of income, and you're gonna get more money, and again, it's gonna be a little bit less overwhelming than if you put all the pressure on your store or all the pressure on your Patreon. I talked a lot this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope at least one section of it was helpful. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope this update gave you a little bit more insight, and if there's anything that I missed or you have any questions, just comment them below. I'm very happy to answer them. Yeah, again, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. So before I close out the video, I wanted to talk about the sponsor, which is Squarespace. If you don't know what Squarespace is, it's an all-in-one platform where you can make your very own website. It is personally the platform that I have always used to run my website and my business. From when I first started in 2019, I have been using Squarespace ever since. They have some really great tools for you if you want to run a business on there. Commerce Tool helps you see your inventory, your orders, your customer base, etc. Analytics kind of helps you see how your website is performing, how much revenue you're making, clicks, etc. Design interface, super easy to use, beginner friendly. They have templates. I use a template, I think most people do, but if you like coding, they let you do that as well. If you're interested in Squarespace, you can get a free trial and use my code for 10% off your first purchase.